At exactly 3:17 hours on March 29, 2026, the silence over the Indian Ocean was broken by something that the world's most experienced naval analysts had called an impossibility just 6 weeks prior. Deep inside the Makran coastal belt of southern Iran, a mobile TEL, a transporter erector launcher carrying an Emad-class intermediate-range ballistic missile, elevated its launch rail to 85 degrees. Seconds later, a pillar of fire tore through the pre-dawn darkness. Then a second. 2 IRBMs, their guidance packages locked onto coordinates 4,200 kilometers away, the tiny coral atoll of Diego Garcia, home to the most strategically vital US-UK military installation in the Indo-Pacific theater, Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia. This was not a miscalculation. This was not a desperate act of a cornered regime firing blindly into the dark. This was a carefully prepared strategic message, broadcast in the language of ballistic flame, that Iran, 31 days into a war it did not choose, had both the will and the reach to threaten American power far beyond the Persian Gulf. What you are about to witness is a minute-by-minute reconstruction of the most dangerous 22 minutes in the 31-day war between the US-Israeli coalition and the Islamic Republic of Iran. A confrontation that nearly spiraled into a global naval war fought across 3 oceans simultaneously. The lead-up to the Diego Garcia strike did not begin on March 29th. It began 3 weeks earlier when CENTCOM's Air and Missile Defense Command, AAMDC, first detected a disturbing pattern. Iranian Quds, satellite reconnaissance platforms, had begun executing irregular orbital passes over the central Indian Ocean. The passes were timed to gaps in the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group's SBIRS Block III electronic emissions schedule. Iran was mapping. They were building a targeting solution with patience and precision that should have caused alarm at the highest levels of Pacific Command. The alarm came too late. By 2:55 hours on March 29th, Space Force's infrared surveillance constellation, the SBIRS network of geosynchronous and highly elliptical satellites, detected the thermal bloom of vehicle engine starts in the Makran coastal region. The signature matched a known IRGC Aerospace Force mobile launcher battalion that had relocated from its garrison near Sharad 6 days earlier, exploiting the chaos of ongoing Israeli strikes on Tehran's defense nodes to move undetected. The duty officer at CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center in Al Udeid, Qatar, flagged the contact as possible pre-launch posture and requested authority to surge an EP-3E Ares II signals intelligence aircraft. The request was in processing when the missiles left the rails. 0317-04 hours. The SBIRS mid-course track acquisition alarm screamed across every Link 16 connected platform in the theater. An Emad-class IRBM has a peak apogee of approximately 800 kilometers and a terminal phase velocity approaching Mach 14. From launch to impact on Diego Garcia, approximately 18 minutes, the clock started. At that precise moment, Diego Garcia was not a sleeping base. 31 days of war had ensured that. The base hosted a rotating complement of BH Stratofortress bombers from the 5th Bomb Wing, 3 KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft, prepositioned stocks of GBU-57AB massive ordnance penetrators, the only conventional weapon capable of defeating Iran's deeply buried Fordo nuclear facility, and critically, a detachment of Navy P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft that had been running 18-hour ISR orbits over the Strait of Hormuz. The base was the irreplaceable logistical spine of the entire campaign. Iran knew this. They had been watching it for weeks. The Aegis ashore equivalent capability stationed on Diego Garcia, a shore-based version of the N/Spy-6V air and missile defense radar, acquired both tracks at T-15 minutes and immediately transmitted a fire control solution to the USS Shiloh, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser operating 340 nautical miles northwest of the atoll. The Shiloh's Combat Information Center exploded into choreographed controlled chaos. The Tactical Action Officer declared weapons free under Automatic Self-Defense Protocol 7 Delta. 2 Standard Missile 3 Block IIA interceptors, the SM-3 IIA, a joint U.S.-Japanese program that represents the outer boundary of non-nuclear ballistic missile defense, erupted from the Shiloh's vertical launch system cells. Their kill vehicle heat seekers searched the exoatmosphere for the twin warheads burning through the darkness above. Simultaneously, the MIM-104F Patriot PAC-3 batteries ringing Diego Garcia's flight line went to full engagement mode. The PAC-3 missile segment enhancement rounds MSE armed and elevated. The base sirens activated. Within 90 seconds, every aircraft on the flight line had aircrew sprinting toward hardened shelters. The B-52H crews did not go to their aircraft. There was no time to fly out. They went underground, and they prayed that the layered missile defense envelope held. At T-7 minutes, the first SM-3 IIA scored a direct body-to-body kinetic intercept on Emad-1 at an altitude of 480 kilometers above the Indian Ocean. The closing velocity of the hit-to-kill intercept was over Mach 20. The Iranian warhead did not detonate. It disintegrated. A shower of superheated debris rained silently into the ocean, invisible from the surface below. The base's radar screens showed the track extinguish. 1 down, 1 incoming. Emad-2 executed a terminal maneuver, a pre-programmed evasion sequence built into the missile's guidance package that caused it to pull 6 GS during re-entry, attempting to basket out of the Patriot PAC-3's engagement envelope. It nearly worked. The first PAC-3 MSE missed by 11 meters. The second did not miss. The kinetic warhead detonated in direct proximity 9 kilometers above Diego Garcia's main runway at 3:35 hours. The airburst scattered lethal high-velocity fragments across a 3-kilometer radius. No aircraft were destroyed. The hardened fuel storage igloo took shrapnel damage. A USAF staff sergeant was wounded by flying glass at the base operations center. He survived. Iran's most audacious long-range strike of the war had been stopped, barely, by a defensive architecture that performed at the absolute edge of its technical specification. But the strike on Diego Garcia was never meant to destroy the base. It was a message, a distraction, and a strategic lever. Because at the exact moment those 2 missiles were in the air, 3 other events were unfolding simultaneously across the theater that collectively represented the most dangerous 22-minute window of the entire war. At 3:18 hours, 60 seconds after the Iranian launch was detected, the Houthi military spokesman in Sana'a activated an encrypted media broadcast channel. The announcement was terse and devastating. The Ansar Allah movement, after 6 months of restraint following their May 2025 ceasefire, was formally re-entering the regional war. Within minutes, CENTCOM's air defense network detected the launch of a Houthi Tufan 4 hypersonic glide vehicle from a position in Hajj province in northwestern Yemen, aimed at the Nevatim air base in Israel's Negev desert. Simultaneously, a second launch, a Badr-3 ballistic missile on a trajectory toward the port city of Eilat. The glide vehicle was intercepted by an Arrow-3 system over Saudi airspace. The Badr-3 was splashed by an Iron Dome battery 40 seconds before impact. Neither struck its target, but the message was unmistakable. The southern flank of Israel's missile defense architecture had just been forced to fire precious interceptor inventory from 2 directions simultaneously, while dealing with ongoing Iranian salvos from the northeast. Each Iron Dome Tamir interceptor costs $90,000. Each Arrow-3 interceptor costs $3 million. Iran had studied the economics of attrition warfare with clinical precision. At 3:19 hours, 2 minutes into the crisis, the third and most strategically consequential development exploded onto the Link 16 tactical picture. Deep in the Strait of Hormuz, The USS Paul Hamilton, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer assigned to Task Force 59, detected the acoustic signature of Iranian bottom-influence mines being deployed across Channel Alpha, the primary eastbound shipping lane through the strait. A swarm of 14 IRGC Navy fast attack craft had used the chaos of the ongoing SBIRS alarm, cycling to sortie from Bandar Abbas under the cover of the base's electronic masking dome. Essentially, a forest of simultaneous radar emissions designed to blind AN Spy 6 maritime surveillance. The mines were not contact detonated. They were influence mines, triggered by the combined magnetic, acoustic, and pressure signatures of supertankers. Iran was not closing the Strait of Hormuz with military force. They were making it suicidal to transit it. Approximately 2,000 commercial vessels were already anchored in holding patterns inside and outside the strait at this point in the war. 20,000 seafarers, trillions of dollars in cargo. Iran's calculation was precise. Every day the strait remained de facto closed, oil prices climbed, American voters bled economically, and political pressure on the Trump administration to accept Iranian ceasefire terms intensified. At 3:22 hours, the Paul Hamilton's commanding officer made the call that the tactical situation demanded. He ordered his RHIB, rigid hull inflatable boat, teams and the embarked SEAL platoon from SEAL Team 3 into the water. Their mission: clear Channel Alpha. In the darkness of the strait, in water temperature of 27 degrees Celsius, with IRGC fast attack craft circling at a distance of 4 kilometers, 6 SEALs and 2 EOD technicians began diving on Iranian mines, while the Paul Hamilton's 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun covered the perimeter. It was a scene of almost incomprehensible tactical intensity. Subsurface explosive ordnance disposal being conducted under active threat in international waters, while ballistic missiles were being intercepted 4,000 kilometers away. By 3:32 hours, the same minute that Emad-2 was destroyed above Diego Garcia, the SEALs had positively identified and marked 7 of the 14 mines. The remaining 7 were engaged by the Paul Hamilton's Mk-60 Captor mine neutralization system and by a pair of MH-60R Seahawk helicopters conducting acoustic mine hunting runs with the AN/AQS-22 airborne low-frequency sonar. The helicopter crews flew at 30 feet above the water, dragging sonar arrays through black water with Iranian fast attack boats illuminated on their FLIR sensors less than 3 nautical miles away. At 3:39 hours, CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center at Al-Udeid released a Package Alpha strike package that had been built and rehearsed for exactly this contingency. 12 FA-18EF Super Hornets from VFA-31 aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, armed with AGM-154C JSOW standoff glide weapons, executed coordinated precision strikes on the IRGC Navy's Bandar Abbas fast attack craft pens and the Shahid Bagheri missile boat facility on Keshem Island. The EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft from VAQ-132, the Scorpions, preceded the strike package by 4 minutes, executing an electronic attack on the Iranian College Fars radar network with ALQ-99 jamming pods. By the time the first JSOW reached its terminal guidance phase, the Iranian radar picture was a wall of digital snow. 14 IRGC fast attack craft were destroyed at their moorings. The mine-laying mission in Channel Alpha was disrupted, but not neutralized. 11 mines remained on the bottom of the world's most critical energy choke point. This is where the full scope of the American response became visible, and where Iran's calculation that the United States would not risk escalation was systematically dismantled. The strike on Diego Garcia had triggered the automatic activation of CO and PLAN 80, 880, 826, the Indo-Pacific Command's integrated response playbook for attacks on sovereign U.S. territory and facilities. Within 40 minutes of the first IRBM launch detection, the Pentagon authorized the deployment of the 82nd Airborne Division's 1st Brigade Combat Team, the Global Response Force, from Pope Field, North Carolina. C-17A Globemaster IIIs began loading M119 howitzers, HIMARS rocket artillery systems, and 3,200 paratroopers for forward positioning to Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE. Simultaneously, the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group, carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, accelerated its transit speed from 18 to 22 knots in the Pacific, compressing its estimated arrival in the Persian Gulf by 36 hours. The message being assembled by American logistics was not subtle. It was a declaration written in steel and aviation fuel. The United States was not winding down. It was layering. In the following 48 hours, satellite imagery from commercial providers would show a remarkable scene at the IRGC Aerospace Forces Sharad Space Center and at the mobile launcher garrison in the Makran coastal belt. The TEL vehicles that had launched the Diego Garcia missiles were gone, relocated within 18 minutes of firing, exactly as doctrine prescribed. But the sites they had occupied were not empty. They were craters. The B-21 Raiders operating from an undisclosed base in the Indian Ocean Theater, the aircraft's first operational combat use, had tracked the launcher heat signatures from exoatmospheric altitude using the AN/APQ-239 active electronically scanned array radar. The LRASMB long-range anti-ship missile, repurposed for land strike, reached the target coordinates at 3:58 hours. The launcher sites were destroyed. The crews had escaped. The message had been sent in both directions. The aftermath of these 22 minutes rewrote the operational calculus of every military staff officer in the theater. Iran had demonstrated, definitively, that it possessed the will and the technical capability to threaten U.S. power at ranges that no conventional planner had included in their base case scenarios. An IRBM strike on Diego Garcia, even an intercepted one, represents a strategic red line crossed. The political and military consequences will echo for years beyond any ceasefire. But the U.S. response demonstrated something equally sobering. Every single element of the American counter, the SM-3 intercept, the Patriot terminal defense, the SEAL mine clearance, the EA-18G electronic blinding, the JSOW precision strike, the B-21 launcher kill had been pre-planned, pre-rehearsed, and executed with near-zero hesitation. The Americans were not reacting. They were executing. The speed of integration between space surveillance, sea-based intercept, carrier aviation, and special operations was so complete that the Iranian attack, boldly conceived and carefully prepared, was answered comprehensively before most of the world's media had even filed their first wire stories. What does this mean for the next phase of the war? The Strait of Hormuz still has 11 mines on its floor. The Houthis have re-entered the fight. Hezbollah has killed an Israeli soldier in Lebanon, and more than 1,100 Lebanese civilians have paid the price of that front's escalation. Iran's IRGC Navy commander is dead, killed by an Israeli precision strike on Isfahan. The IRGC's public spokesman is dead. 13 American service members have been killed, hundreds wounded. Pakistan is mediating talks that neither side has confirmed are happening. Trump has extended his energy strike pause to April 6th, the date the entire world is now watching. The uranium enrichment infrastructure at Fordo still sits intact beneath 80 meters of granite mountain. The IAEA has confirmed it. The war's stated objective, degrading Iran's nuclear capability, remains, in the words of the agency's own Director General, incomplete. The material is still there. The enrichment capacity is still there. This conflict has not ended the threat. It has revealed its depth. What you have just witnessed is not a story about missiles and interceptors. It is a story about the fragility of the international order at the moment it is being tested most severely since 1962. An Iranian ballistic missile flying toward a joint US-UK base in the Indian Ocean is not a tactical event. It is a statement that the geography of this war has no natural boundaries, that no American platform, no Allied facility, and no commercial shipping lane exists outside the threat envelope of a determined state actor willing to absorb punishment in exchange for strategic leverage. The next 72 hours will determine whether Pakistan's mediation produces a framework, or whether the USS Boxer's arrival in the Persian Gulf produces a new escalation ladder that no one in Washington, Tehran, Tel Aviv, or anywhere else has a map for. Stay sharp. Stay informed. And ask yourself this: when the world's most powerful military and a 30 million strong nation state locked in an existential confrontation are separated by nothing but a 22-minute ballistic missile flight time, what does peace actually mean anymore?